David Whitehouse says this is one of these pieces about the comments that have been left, and I read through the comments. Sometimes I think they really need to be called out. This is one that needs to be called out. David Whitehouse says, compensation. We're talking about the flim-flam of the Horizon compensation scheme, the language that Alan Bates used to describe the legerdemain, the nonsensical, the nonsensical magic which the government and the post office limit have been using to avoid their responsibility. And flim-flam is a word coined, I think, by the fellow from The Greatest Showman. What's his name now? Barnum, P.T. Barnum. He talks about deceit, really, and he's effectively talking about white lies and the magic, the entertainment of deceit, flim-flam. And this person says, I had to take a local taxi to a hospital appointment, outrageous. And on the way, I struck up a conversation with the driver, as you do. He had been a post office victim, been robbed of £70,000, which put him into serious financial trouble as he was forced to pay it. He had to employ a solicitor to fight on his behalf, as the compensation he was offered was little more than £16,000. Not one post office manager who was involved in this scandal has been prosecuted for what is a criminal travesty. Venables has hid herself away, and the others who were interviewed remain arrogant in their denial of wrongdoing. This is Great Britain, a corporate cesspool of evil, protected creatures that are allowed to get away with such dealings, while the Untermensch are expected to know their place and just suck it up when all becomes old news. You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. And it is outrageous that people like Venables and Moan are swanning around the place, posturing with their ill-gotten gain, their reputation in smithereens, and yet not be held accountable, not be brought to justice for what appears to be serious mismanagement or manipulation, even deceit. And it's I don't think these are the people that we should have in our targets. This is the point. I think you're quite right, David. It's the people who have empowered these individuals. These individuals have just got their snout in the trough. But the people who are decorating this travesty with inquiries and official bureaucracy, these are the people who should be brought into court and should be held accountable. But simply bringing them into court, the lawyers are lining their pockets with gold. We have a system that doesn't work, sadly, and whose underbelly, the miserable underbelly of this catfish, it's an animal that needs to be brought to the surface and exposed for the wretched job that it is doing. And I don't think it's just the post office. I don't think it's just the NHS and the bureaucrats in the NHS skimming off the profits and sitting pretty while the people who are doing the hard work are being paid a pittance. And we who are on the receiving end, who are dependent on that service, are supposed to be grateful, are supposed to clap for the goods that are delivered in a tardy way. I had a cancer scare earlier this summer, and I turned for help. To their credit, I got help. I got a doctor who came out in the middle of the night. He was an Iraqi doctor who'd been trained in Oxford, and we had a lovely conversation. And I thought, maybe all my doubts are wrong. But he sent me off to my local GP. I saw a locum eventually, who sent me off for a blood test without the proper paperwork. I was sent back. I went back for the blood test. I finally read the paperwork while I was sitting around waiting, and I realized the paperwork was absurd. I was being sent for an iron deficiency test when I should have been sent to see whether or not I had cancer. And there's a very nice test which will actually quite specifically demonstrate where the cancer that I had has come back. 8 weeks went by before I finally had that test. In the meantime, have I had a result for the iron test? No, I haven't. Haven't heard a thing from my local GP. Not a thing. And I think, what is this? What is this? It's sort of madness. And it's couched in the language of authority. And it was only when my consultant came back from holiday that things moved forward, and I got the tests which were actually overdue, and which should demonstrate what's going wrong. And in fact, I'm more reassured now than I was. But 8 weeks or 9 weeks now, for something that could have been very simply sorted out with a blood test. At least my mind would have been put at rest. And you just think, this is madness, utter madness. And in almost any other country where you've got a sort of health service which, admittedly, you may have to take out insurance to sort out what you've got, you have control over your own medical records. We don't have control over our medical records. We have this class of patronizing medical practice that thinks it knows better than us and keeps making mistakes because the bureaucracy is out of control. It's tardy, it's rude, it's aggressive, and it's ill-informed. It keeps making mistakes. And yet there are people who spend huge amounts of money in the government to stop whistleblowers being heard. There are people who spend huge amounts of money in the government and in the health service to keep people who aren't doing their jobs properly in position. Mostly bureaucrats. And I don't understand how this works. I don't understand how we tolerate it. And if I say something about bureaucrats, I'm told that I'm being offensive to managers. I'm not being offensive to managers. If the management oversees bureaucracy, paperwork, which is clearly erroneous, the management is not managing properly. The bureaucrats are failing. The system is crumbling. It's not so difficult to get the paperwork right, is it? The waiting times are a different matter. But the basic bureaucracy, it's not so difficult to get it right. And over all this is the assumption that we, the Untermensch, I like that word, are too stupid to be able to understand the paperwork. I don't like being patronized by people who can't get their own job right.